Hi, this is Chris Ebach with the 10-Minute Writer. Quick tips to make your writing stronger. Today I'm going to talk about scene questions. A scene is basically when characters come onto the page in a particular time and place, start acting and speaking, and the scene ends when you jump to a new location or a different time. A scene may be the same as a chapter, or a chapter may have several scenes, or a scene may go across several chapters. But basically, you can use this advice for every scene or for every chapter. Scenes should almost be like short stories in themselves. So your novel or other product as a whole has a character with a goal that they are working to achieve. Each scene should have a goal for that character as well. It may be a piece of the larger goal. So they want to get to this end point, but they need to go through multiple steps to get there. So a scene may have them working on one of those steps. You want to show that goal clearly at the start of the scene, or you may mention it at the end of the prior scene. But readers should know upfront what specific goal this character is trying to achieve in this scene. And then you want to show the main character actually working toward that goal. So they're not just passive and having things happen around them. They have a goal and they're working to achieve it, and it is challenging for some reason. Of course, there are always alternatives to this. There's times when this may not be true, but in general, your story will be stronger if you have a main character with challenging goals that are important to them and you show them working to achieve those goals. At the end of the scene, you want your reader to understand whether the character succeeded or not. And there's 4 basic ways a scene can end answering that question. So maybe, let's say your character wants to go to their boss and get a raise because they have a family member who has some big health issues and they need the extra money. So that's their goal, get a raise. It's important because they need the money for a really good reason. If they go to their boss and ask for a raise and the boss says yes, well, that's a fairly easy response to that challenge. So you generally want to avoid having the answer be yes unless you're at the end of the novel, or if it is only one step in a larger chain and the reader already knows what that big chain is. And even then, you might end that scene with the response of, yay, I did what I needed to do. Now I have this next thing to do. So you're always driving the story forward, getting the reader to turn the page to find out what happens next. More often, you might have a scene end in no, they have failed. So then the question is, what do they do next? Do they try again in the same way? Do they try a new method to achieve this goal, or do they move on to something else entirely? A couple of fun ones to play with are yes, but. So there's a success, but there's a complication. So if they're asking for a raise because they need this money for a sick family member, maybe the boss says, yes, you can have a raise, but you're going to need to do a lot more travel. So now your character has this choice. They can get the money that they wanted, but it will keep them away from the family member who also needs help. So it's a complication that means they've succeeded, but added additional problems. And then there's the no and furthermore possibility. So this case, it could be that they go and ask for a raise and the boss blows up at them and fires them. So they've actually made the situation worse by trying to get one thing, and now they're in a much more difficult situation. So those are kind of fun options to play with, fun for you as the writer, not so much fun for the character, but they can really add some twists and turns and increase the drama in the story. One thing you can do to look at your scenes and make sure they're working well is for every scene, write a sentence describing what happens. Really try to narrow it down into 1 or 2 sentences. And then you can look at, does that scene have a goal, such as a short-term goal for the character that leads to that larger goal that's going to be the main story goal? Can you make the stakes any higher? What could you add to make it even more important or more challenging that they're going to, whether they succeed or fail? Make sure that you show that goal clearly at the start of the chapter or the scene. And do you have the main character working to achieve that goal throughout the scene? And there's a couple of ways you can do this kind of outlining process. One is you can do it at the beginning before you've started writing, or you can stop somewhere through a novel, and just if you're not quite sure where to go next, you can write a bunch of ideas down. I like to put ideas on cards, and then I can shift them around and choose the ones that I like best, see how they fit together. So you can do this at the outlining stage if you're an outliner, or at the planning stage. You can also make a reverse outline after the fact. So you've written a novel, but it's big, it's unwieldy, it can be hard to see what's actually going on, especially when you as a writer are so close to it. So you can go through and write that scene or a couple of scenes for each chapter, and then you can use that to ask these questions and analyze what you have in the book. And that's good because then you can go into more detail and ask other questions about the scene. So, does the scene advance the plot and reveal something about the characters? You can look at what emotions you've portrayed. You want strong emotion, but you also want ups and downs. If you have a character who's just like anxious for 100 pages, it's going to get exhausting for the reader, and it's also going to get a bit tedious because we can't maintain that level of anxiety for so long. So actually bringing it down, having some quieter moments or some happy moments, some successes, and then having a complication can make it more dramatic because the reader has relaxed and then they get worked up again. You can check whether each scene leads logically to the next, and if they're in the proper order or if they'd be better shuffled around somewhere. And you can check for redundant scenes. So if you have your sort of one sentence about what happens in each scene and you have several of those scenes where the sentence is basically the same, maybe you don't need all that scenes. So you could cut some or combine them. And you can also look at which are your strongest scenes. Should you expand them for more drama or add more complications? So, as a quick example, Bandit's Peak is a middle grade novel I wrote featuring a 13-year-old boy who runs into mysterious people in the woods. And so, after writing it, I thought I had a pretty good manuscript, but I wasn't finding a publisher for it. So, I did this kind of reverse outline looking at what I actually had in the book. Chapter 1 was 12 pages long. That was kind of useful for me to know because for novels for this age, I usually keep chapters shorter. Jesse plans a fishing trip, and his parents are talking about some things that he doesn't really understand and they won't explain. So there's some family secrets. Is there conflict? Yes. But it is not one that he's actively trying to do anything about. And are there emotions? Yeah, but they're kind of the same throughout. So then I made notes on what I wanted to do with that chapter. Delete the opening scene, start the next day when he's ready to leave on his trip, as opposed to having a scene where he's simply planning a trip. Make sure I include his father so I can show the conflict between them, but mainly get Jesse out of the house and into the woods quickly because that's where most of the story takes place. In chapter 2, Jesse goes hiking. He saw some footprints and followed them until he met a woman in the woods. Was there conflict? Not really. A little bit of tension, but not any real conflict and no real goal. And the emotions were that he felt confident of his woods abilities and then curiosity about this person. So my notes were cut some of the description to get to the action sooner. And then I wanted to add a little bit of conflict or drama. So I had to notice blood on the trail. And so that's why he follows the footprints, because he wants to find out if somebody needs help. So by asking these questions and looking at individual scenes, almost as many short stories that may not be resolved, but that have a character trying to achieve a goal which is clear to the reader, can really increase the drama in your story and keep readers turning those pages. If you would like to learn more, my book, Advanced Plotting, has a whole bunch of these questions that you can ask about scenes and articles to help you if you find weak spots. And that is available in print or ebook at major retailers. And I also have an online on-demand class on advanced plotting that goes into different aspects of plot. You can look at my other videos on this YouTube channel to see some of the short examples from those longer videos that are in the class. To find any of that, go to my chrisebach.com website and the For Writers tab. You can download for free the plot outline exercise from Advanced Plotting so that you can see the questions that I suggest asking and you just fill it out for your book. And you can also find out more information about the advanced plotting class and my books. That's it for today. Thanks for joining me for the 10-Minute Writer.